So now it's the prosecutor versus the convicted felon. President Biden has ended his presidential campaign over the weekend. He immediately endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris, and renewed energy right away was restored into the Democratic campaign for the presidency. I mean, a selfless act by President Biden contrasted with the most selfish of acts by Donald Trump trying to overthrow a free and fair election to install himself as a dictator. And the voters and the American public are taking note. Look, fundraising was over $81 million for Vice President Kamala Harris now as the presumptive Democratic nominee for president in a 24-hour period. She's received the endorsement from governors, unions, Democratic leaders, a major Nikki Haley political action committee, social media influencers, celebrities. The memes have been rolling out, and it definitely feels like there is an energy that was missing. That said, with President Biden missing from the top of the ticket, it is so important that we reflect on his accomplishments. One of the most transformative, if not the most transformative president in recent American history, someone who has accomplished so much. And we all saw what was happening. I hope you've all appreciated our coverage here on the MeidasTouch Network. And it was definitely very upsetting to me. And sometimes it's hard for me as a newscaster to set that aside. So I hope you will just allow me to share some raw emotion as I did over the weekend when President Biden announced that he would be ending his campaign. I thought President Biden was still primed to win. I thought President Biden was a good candidate. I thought President Biden was, again, one of the most accomplished presidents. That said, I am equally confident and very, very, very positive about Vice President Kamala Harris in winning. And I think it's time that we unite as a pro-democracy community. There's really no time to waste with democracy on the line. And that's what we're going to do at the MeidasTouch Network. We're continuing to make our coverage unapologetically pro-democracy, and we are going to continue to call all of this out. Also, it is enjoyable to watch Donald Trump's campaign in MAGA in a total and absolute panic right now as they're trying to figure out what to do here. Let's bring in Brett and Jordy. Brett, Jordy, you got Donald Trump posting all night. Most of his posts still about President Biden. They don't really know what they're doing. How are you guys doing? It's been a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah, and first I want to address the emotional aspect about this all, because I know, we all certainly have to move on and, get behind democracy. And I love the energy that we have seen in the past 24 hours. I love the unity that we have seen in the past 24 hours. But I think it's important to at least momentarily reflect on that emotional aspect, which is, President Biden leaving the race was difficult for a lot of people. I know it was difficult for us here. I know it's difficult for a lot of you there. And I genuinely believe that maybe until the latest batch of polls came out yesterday, that President Biden had no intention of going anywhere. And it's tough. President Biden has had a storied career. He's had an incredible life. He's also had a very difficult life. And I think throughout President Biden's life, it's been defined by his personal sacrifice. And I think that was no better shown than yesterday when he did what Donald Trump couldn't do in a billion years. In fact, Donald Trump tried to cling on to power to destroy this country, but ultimately President Biden felt that it was his responsibility to give up his future power in order to save this country. And I think that is, while very deeply saddening to me personally, and so many Americans out there, I think it is such a noble thing to do and really speaks to the man's character and his integrity. And I think he accomplished so much. And the good thing with Kamala Harris is I think she gets to continue on with that legacy from the Biden-Harris administration. And President Biden isn't going anywhere. He's still working his butt off for these next few months as president of the United States. And I know earlier he said that he was going to actually hit the campaign trail with Kamala Harris. We'll play some of the president's comments in a little bit. But I mean, from the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the PACT Act, so many different policies that are going to impact people's lives for future generations, the CHIPS and Science Act. I mean, the fact that President Biden got us out of the COVID pandemic, defeated Trump, saved democracy once, and is looking to save democracy again. I think President Biden is going to go down in history when this is all said and done as one of the single best presidents of all time, quite frankly. Certainly one of the most consequential presidents of all time, with transformative pieces of legislation making it through, doing more, I would say, in his 3.5 years up to this point than most presidents do when they're given 8 years to do work for the American people. So I just want to make sure that that's clear out front. Now, with all that said, I think we don't have really time at this point to kind of lick our wounds. I think we need to move forward. The only path forward is forward. And we're lucky that we have a great nominee who is already on the ticket, Vice President Kamala Harris, and seeing the unity, seeing everybody from labor to never Trumpers to progressives to Gen Z to celebrities to everybody who was normally part of this pro-democracy coalition join forces in these past 24 hours with a level of enthusiasm that I've not seen in years. It was such an incredible sight, and something that's much needed. And I think this contrast that we have now between the prosecutor and the felon is a good case to be made to the American people. It's quite clear cut. And suddenly Donald Trump is now the oldest nominee in presidential history. And the entire book that they wrote on how they were going to run this campaign has been flipped completely on them. And it is quite the sight to behold. I know that was a bit long in the beginning. I'll toss it to Jordy. I know we got a lot to get into.
No, that was great. Look, these last 3 weeks have been the longest 10 months of my 31 years on this planet. And I'm sure it's like that for a lot of folks right now. But President Biden is a patriot. He deeply loves this country. And he wouldn't have done what he did unless he thought it was definitely the best way to beat Trump in November. My cards are on the table. Like I've spoken about this on the podcast. And I know I'm speaking for a lot of the Meidas Mighty because we've had the conversations too. This isn't what I wanted, but the stakes are far too high to sit and sulk. As Brett said, the only way forward is forward. The pro-democracy coalition, we have to rally behind Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee. And we've seen that happen in action. Like the energy right now for Harris is palpable. The donations coming her way are extraordinary, but the money and the energy just simply won't be enough to beat Trump. Right? We all have to recommit ourselves to the mission, and we have to have our voices heard at the ballot box. Democrats now have this young, energized ticket taking on the oldest and least popular presidential candidate in history. The Dems can win, but it's going to take all of us, and we have to keep the faith. We got this. Ben.
Look, it's an important moment right now, not just for Dems, for the pro-democracy community, for team normalcy, right? For team democracy to unite and see the stakes. I think one of the most difficult challenges that President Biden had, just among others, is that the corporate media was not stopping their narrative. And people needed to reflect on the threats that Donald Trump posed. And while there were some important voices on independent networks like this and a handful of others, by and large, the media was refusing to cover the threats to democracy. And I think that's where President Biden made the decision at the kind of that very last moment over the weekend to say, look, we need to focus on the threats that Trump is posing. Let's just go and show you, though, some of these historic moments that unfolded over the weekend, over the past 24 hours. Here is Vice President Harris on President Joe Biden's legacy during a White House event honoring the NCAA championship teams earlier in the day. Let's show you this.
And I wanted to say a few words about our president. Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. In one term, he has already, yes, you may clap. In one term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who have served 2 terms in office. And I first came to know President Biden through his son, Beau. We worked together as attorneys general in our states, and back then, Beau would often tell me stories about his dad. He would talk about the kind of father and the kind of man that Joe Biden is. The qualities that Beau revered in his father are the same qualities that I have seen every day in our president. His honesty, his integrity, his commitment to his faith and his family, his big heart, and his love, deep love of our country. And I am firsthand witness that every day our President Joe Biden fights for the American people, and we are deeply, deeply grateful for his service to our nation.
As I said at the top of the show as well, it's now about the prosecutor, Kamala Harris, versus the convicted felon in Donald Trump, someone who was found liable for sexual assault, someone who has bankrupted most of the companies that he's been involved with. And so for people wondering, is Vice President Harris's prosecutorial skills, how are they going to translate in a debate? With the next debate coming over, going to happen in September. Let's just take a look at some of these debates, like a recent one where Vice President Harris called Donald Trump's White House a criminal enterprise during the Democratic debate in 2020. She was a great debater. Here, watch this.
We have a criminal living in the White House. And there is no question that in 2020, the biggest issue before us until we get to that tender moment is justice is on the ballot. And what we saw today is Ambassador Sondland, by his own words, told us that everyone was in the loop. That means it is a criminal enterprise engaged in by the president, from what we heard today, the vice president, the secretary of state, and the chief of staff. And so this not only points to the corrupt nature of this administration and the need for these impeachment proceedings to go forward, but it also points to another issue. And back to the question that you asked earlier, which is, what does this mean for the American people? Because what it means when I watch this is that there are clearly 2 different set of rules for 2 different groups of people in America. The powerful people who with their arrogance think they can get away with this, and then everybody else. Because here's the thing. For those working people who are working 2 and 3 jobs, if they don't pay that credit card by the end of the month, they get a penalty. For the people who don't pay their rent, they get evicted. For the people who shoplift, they go to jail. We need the same set of rules for everybody. And part of the reason I'm running for president is to say that we have to bring justice back to America for all people and not just for some.
I want to show you another very powerful moment from the debate that Vice President Harris had back in the Democratic primaries in 2020. Let me show you this one as well.
There are plenty of people who applauded black women for the success of the 2018 election, applauded black women for the election of a senator from Alabama. But, you know, at some point, folks get tired of just saying, oh, you know, thank me for showing up, and say, well, show up for me. Because when black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with childbirth in America, when the sons of black women will die because of gun violence more than any other cause of death, when black women make 61 cents on the dollar as compared to all women who tragically make 80 cents on the dollar, the question has to be, where you been and what are you going to do?
Powerful moment right there. And then I forgot about this video that we made at the MeidasTouch network back in 2020. After Vice President Kamala Harris, then Senator Kamala Harris's debate with then Vice President, now former Vice President Mike Pence. there were some powerful moments there, and we did a video on it. Let me just share with you. Let's see if some of the OG Meidas Mighty remember this one. Let's play it.
This is important.
Susan,
I want to
have
add,
to weigh in
but
here.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I'm
speaking. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talked about
It is asking too much of the people.
Well, Susan, thank you. Although I would like to go back.
I think we need to move on
well,
to the
thank
issue
you,
of
but I would like to go back.
In 1864.
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
Mr.
Yes.
Vice President, I'm
Please.
speaking. I'm speaking. Okay.
We
Thank you,
still
Vice
learn
President.
from it, and I think
Vice
the
President
American
Pence, your
people,
time
I
is
want to
up.
say again, can be
Vice
proud
President Pence, I'm sorry,
of
your
what
time
we
is
have
up.
done. She has
15 seconds because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry, but Vice President
Look,
Pence, you've had more time than she's
The
had.
truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000
He said
a
he's going to
year.
repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait,
I'm speaking. If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation. Okay?
please.
Okay.
That was so good right there. Also, as I mentioned at the top of the show, a Nikki Haley PAC has also now endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. And let's see if you remember this. I'll show you this flashback here of Nikki Haley during her campaign against Donald Trump, where she said the following about the first party to retire their 80-year-old candidate. Let's play this one.
The first party to retire its 80-year-old candidate is going to be the party that wins this election.
And then we have Nikki Haley saying this about Donald Trump over and over again. Let's play that clip.
Times change, and so has Trump. He's gotten more unstable and unhinged.
If you mock the service of a combat veteran, you don't deserve a driver's license, let alone being president of the United States.
He was thin-skinned and easily distracted. It's not normal to spend $50 million in campaign contributions on personal court cases. It's not normal to threaten people who back your opponent.
Donald Trump is turning the Republican Party into his own playpen, where it's all about him. He's not qualified to be the president of the United States.
I'll tell you what's not normal either. Threatening civil war if you lose an election. Now, previously, Donald Trump, who led an insurrection against the United States. I know that corporate media doesn't want to cover that and they want to normalize that behavior. But earlier today, there was a Trump campaign event. This is an officially sponsored Trump event where his vice president, shady JD Vance, was speaking. And let me just share with you what the first speaker said. A MAGA Republican, George Lang, who's an Ohio state senator who introduced JD Vance, threatened civil war if Donald Trump loses this election. So let me show it to you.
Please welcome to the stage State Senator George Lang.
Fight! 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 We got time. Come on. Hey, we are in the fight for the soul of our nation. We are in a fight for our kids and our grandkids, a fight that we can never imagine. I believe wholeheartedly Donald Trump and Butler County's J.D. Vance are the last chance to save our country politically. I'm afraid if we lose this one, it's going to take a civil war to save the country, and it will be saved.
It's going to take a civil war to save the country. Now, you can say, I think it would be disingenuous, but you can say, hey, Ben, JD Vance didn't say that, though, or Trump didn't say that. It was at their event. They absolutely said it. JD Vance didn't take the stage and did what an honorable person, John McCain, did, where if someone were to make a racist or hateful statement, McCain would take the microphone away. Nope. They went on with the event, business as usual, threatening civil war. And we'll see in the morning if that becomes, we know it won't be a headline in corporate media because they don't care about things like that anymore. I wonder if it will even be a story of any significance in any major paper or any major media. Could you imagine if in a Democratic event they threatened a civil war before introducing the candidate? Just think about that.
Ben, but what about the new tone that corporate media has been telling us about from these Republicans? New tone. No, new tone, Ben. Come on. They told us new tone.
I think it's quite funny, just as an aside, that the Republicans put all this money into a convention and had all this messaging at a convention, which ended up being directed at somebody who is not running in the election. And then after the fact, now it's a whole new race and they literally don't know what to do. And I think when we watch somebody like that elected official in Ohio who was speaking at the Trump campaign event with JD Vance, I think we see that desperation coming through. I think we see them quite literally not knowing what the heck to do. How do we message it? So they are just going to the complete and utter extremes of their rhetoric. They totally don't know what to do. And we'll go over in a little bit, we'll go over Donald Trump's statements because Trump is freaking out. Trump is still attacking Biden. I'm not sure if Trump realizes that the election is different now. All the Trump kind of campaign people, their messaging is just bizarre and weird. And at that same event, this was JD Vance's message. And I think now like the contrast is more clear than ever. And the Trump Vance ticket just looks very almost old and outdated. Yes, JD Vance is young in numbers, but his ideas come off old and bland and boring. And you have at that same event, this is JD Vance's message to the audience. And let me know what you think of this super awkward Jeb Bush-like moment, I'll call it.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys.
It looks like Trump also picked a guy whose hands are smaller than his hands. There's an observation that I made there, but I think one of the criteria may have been a hand measuring competition there.
Mr. Personality over there.
You guys think? I know the answer, that he thinks he's crushing it up there. Like I'm going to roll out this Mountain Dew thing and they are going to love it. And then he says it. And I knew it.
Every speech JD Vance gives feels like, I don't even want to offend high school kids, but they feel like high school campaign speeches. They're just not at the level, I'll say. They are simply not at the level. And he is not charismatic at all. His ideas are very dangerous. He is incredibly boring. And I'm hearing that there's a lot of panic right now at Trump HQ where they're going, oh, we're stuck with this guy right now. Like they are actually panicked over their VP pick, thinking maybe they picked him a little too soon now that the race has been upended. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic as we see these internal tensions between Trump and Vance kind of butt up against each other. And we know in the history of Donald Trump's relationship, we'll call it, with his vice presidents.
I just can't believe, and I know it is, but it's just so hard to like just watch corporate media and then not bring up like, oh, whatever happened to Trump's previous vice president? Like, why does he need a new one? Not once. Like, it didn't come up once at the RNC. It infuriates me.
Jordy,
I gotta say,
remember the day.
Shady JD. That's A+, big bro. That's A+.
I remember the day when former Vice President Pence announced he was not going to endorse Donald Trump. It was a blip. I was expecting it, because we devoted significant coverage for others to be like, hey, kind of a big deal. But no, corporate media is not going to cover that. It's why it's important we keep building networks like this, and our numbers and our subscribers have been through the roof. Thank you for recommending this channel to other people in your life, friends, family, coworkers, and colleagues, because this isn't our network, okay? This is your network. And when you get frustrated at CNN and MSNBC, and don't get me started on the propaganda networks, you're doing something about it. You and us together, this community, we are building the media network that we need to have right now. So thank you for that. We've got a lot more to cover. Let's take a quick break though.
Hey everyone, I want to share something that's really made a difference for me when it comes to enjoying a night out with friends. It's called ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol. Pre-Alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have pre-alcohol before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan on hitting the gym, enjoying a brunch, or just getting some important work done without worry. I'll be honest, I was a bit skeptical of ZBiotics at first, but then while hanging out with my friends at our favorite bar downtown, I decided to give it a try, and let me tell you, it really works. The first time I tried pre-alcohol was during a friend's wedding weekend. I had my first drink of the night, a delicious old-fashioned, by the way, right after taking ZBiotics. The next morning, I was up early, feeling great, and ready to join the rest of the wedding party for breakfast and activities. It was a total game changer. With vacations, weddings, birthdays, and reunions, there's so much going on this summer. Get the most out of your plans by stocking up on pre-alcohol now. Go to zbiotics.com/Meidas to get 15% off your first order when you use Meidas at checkout. Pre-alcohol is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/Meidas, MEIDAS, and use the code Meidas at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
I've been trying to lead a heart-healthy lifestyle, but finding the energy to keep up with healthy changes like getting my steps in, it's been an uphill battle. We often think living a more heart-healthy life means making big, unsustainable changes. Well, with SuperBeets Heart Chews, you can get daily blood pressure support in just 2 tasty chews a day. And they even promote heart-healthy energy without the stimulants. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in SuperBeets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. My energy levels are higher than ever. Now, without typical dips from coffee and energy drinks, it's fantastic to support my blood pressure and still have the energy for more physical activity. It's a win-win. Double your potential with SuperBeets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of SuperBeets Heart Chews on all bundles and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and use code Meidas. That's getsuperbeets.com, code Meidas. Let's go. Shout out to our pro-democracy sponsors, y'all. Links in the description of the YouTube and the audio. Use the codes. Let them know we sent you. They're fantastic products. ZBiotics, huge fan of the network. We're a huge fan of theirs. Same with SuperBeets. Show them some love. You will not regret it. I promise.
No, I'm really enjoying some of the memes out there and some of the statements out there. Like there's this one photo of Vice President Kamala Harris, and the person writes, did somebody say black job? And then there's this other account that says, God must have spared Trump so a black woman could beat him. Many people are strongly saying this. It may be slightly politically incorrect, but it is an observation.
It's been a very funny thing seeing people like try to understand some of these memes for the first time, because, you know, they are very niche memes, but they're very popular with Gen Z. And I will say we have, you know, some Gen Z folks on staff, and we often need them to explain everything to us. But I know they are very passionate and energized and fired up about VP Kamala Harris being at the top of the ticket. And I know we've seen like a big outpouring of celebrity support. So yesterday we saw Charlie XCX, who is a music artist, and she has an album called Brat. And that's a good thing in the lingo. Her album's called Brat. And she said yesterday, Kamala is Brat, which is probably honestly worth over $1 million in paid advertising to have somebody like Charlie XCX speak to the younger generation and say things like that. We've seen like Beyonce's mom come out in support of Kamala Harris. We've seen Demi Lovato. We've seen Ariana Grande. There's been this huge outpouring of support from people who I think may have been afraid to kind of enter the political fray until Vice President President Harris came in. So it has been nice seeing that aspect kind of come into this election cycle. The memes are so funny. With the coconut tree memes are very funny. That comes from Kamala Harris's line, "You think you just fell out of a coconut tree," which the RNC tried to use as an attack against her a couple of years ago, but Gen Z flipped into being this very kind of endearing line about living in a specific context and moving forward and resilience and all of that. But the Kamala Harris memes, I think, are great. I was saying to Salty, our producer, being that he's a Gen Z, that he should come on the show and do a Gen Z meme explainer for our audience on Kamala Harris, to go through the unburdened, to go through the coconut, to go through Charlie XCX. But that's my 101 class. But maybe we'll pull on one of our Gen Zers to explain the rest at some point.
Look, one of the things in our coverage that we emphasize over and over again that I think is important is that Donald Trump is a sexual predator. And it is beyond disgusting and shocking that an adjudicated sexual predator is leading a major political party now. He was found liable for sexual assault by a jury in a trial where Donald Trump was too scared to testify, that he flew and made up that he was building something that he wasn't in Scotland and Ireland, and refused to even testify at the trial. And a jury heard the facts and found Trump liable for sexual assault. Now, in addition, Donald Trump is on audio tape bragging about sexually assaulting women. He says because he's rich and famous, they let him do it. He says he's on audio recording saying that. He's on audio recording saying that one of the reasons he runs his beauty pageants is so he gets to inspect naked girls without their consent. And because he's the owner of the pageant, they let him do it. He talks about how the thing that he thinks he has in common with his daughter Ivanka is sex. He's made statements about Lindsay Lohan when she turned 18. She may have even been 17 at the time, but right when she turned 18, about how her mental illness was one of the reasons that he wants to have sex with her. And go back and look at all of our tape, our videos here where we play all of these tapes. I'm not going to burden us by playing all of them here when there's lots of videos and tapes that we've done like that. Donald Trump.
You could be unburdened.
Let's be unburdened by that. Donald Trump is on the Epstein list. He's probably one of the people on it more than anybody else, almost. He's on the call logs. He's in the depositions. He wished the lady who trafficked for him, Ghislaine Maxwell, Trump wished her well before her trial. There's a video of that. He said that Epstein is a great guy who likes women on the younger side. Also, that's called girls, by the way, that Epstein trafficked. Epstein found girls to traffic at Mar-a-Lago, like Virginia Giuffre, who was working at Mar-a-Lago after she was homeless, found the job at Mar-a-Lago, and then Ghislaine Maxwell took her out of Mar-a-Lago to meet Epstein. Like, there's all of that going on. What I like is that in today's speech, Vice President Kamala Harris goes right into it. I'll show you the clips in a little bit where she goes, look, I was a sex prosecutor, okay? And Donald Trump was found liable for committing sexual abuse. I've been saying over and over again here that needs to be brought out. We can't cover our eyes or close our ears to that, reality. I remember former Republican Congress member Denver Riggleman's like, as a girl dad, like, how do I explain to my daughter that the leader of the Republican Party, a party that I was once a part of, has someone who was found liable for sexual assault leading that political party. So let me just show you, though, what went down at the campaign headquarters today. I'll get to that clip in a little bit. But first, let me show you what President Biden said when he called into the headquarters, saying, I know the news was surprising yesterday, but I think we had to make this decision. Listen to him here.
I want people to remember that what we have done has been incredible, and we get so much more we're going to get done. And so I want to say hello to Kamala, if she can hear me. I know she's going to be speaking shortly. And I want to say to the team, embrace her. She's the best. I want to call today to thank everybody in this effort. I know yesterday's news was surprising, and it was hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do. I know it's hard because you poured your heart and soul into me to help us win this thing, help me get this nomination, help me win the nomination, and then go on to win the presidency. But you're an amazing team. But we've got a great. I think we made the right decision. I know how hard you've worked, how many sacrifices you made. And so many of you uprooted your lives for me, and the kind of commitment few people make for anything these days, but you made it. And I've been honored and humbled. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. My word is a Biden, that for all you've done for me and my family.
Hard to listen to that and not shed a tear. And also with that chant, this is what democracy looks like. Like, that is what democracy looks like. Like, when I listen to that, why what America for so many generations was able to attain was the envy of many places in the world and looked to as a beacon of hope. Like, how would you build a system where that's okay and that's allowed and that is a value that's admired? How did you get away from a system of just so much corruption and authoritarianism and build this? And then all of the kind of norms and traditions, right, of our country that were held together by good faith, torn apart by someone in Donald Trump who has ripped to shreds contracts his entire life and bankrupted things. And for Trump's final act, he wants to rip apart and shred the contract rooted in good faith that has held this melting pot together, the United States Constitution. And for President Biden's final act, he wants to preserve and protect that contract, the Constitution. I just think that's on full display here. Here is President Biden saying at this meeting earlier today with Kamala Harris president, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be around supporting Vice President Harris. Here, play the clip.
The name has changed at the top of the ticket, but the mission hasn't changed at all. And by the way, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be out there in the campaign with her, with Kamala. I'm going to be working like hell, both as a sitting president, getting legislation passed, as well as in campaigning. What we still need to save this democracy. And Trump is still a danger to the community. He's a danger to the nation. And just ask my foreign policy colleagues, my counterparts, and other people around the world and at home.
Vice President Kamala Harris, now the presumptive Democratic nominee, then spoke and talked about how it has been a roller coaster. Here, play this clip.
And I know it's been a roller coaster, and we're all filled with so many mixed emotions about this. I just have to say, I love Joe Biden. I love Joe Biden, and I know we all do, and we have so many darn good reasons for loving Joe Biden. And I have full faith that this team will be the reason we win in November. You all who are here. And as Julie always says, and I will quote the great Julie, we are one team, one fight.
One team, one fight against Donald Trump, a threat to democracy and a sexual predator. And again, you just have to articulate it that simply. And I think that's also one of the reasons people come to the MeidasTouch Network, because that's not hyperbolic. That's who Donald Trump is: convicted felon, sexual predator, sexual abuser. That's who he is. He's found liable for it by a jury. And he's on audio tape saying these things. He led an insurrection in front of our eyes. We need someone who prosecutes those claims, and it's great to have a prosecutor now at the top of the ticket. And Vice President Harris leaned into that early in her speech and talked about how she's a courtroom prosecutor. She went in front of juries and prosecuted disgusting people like Donald Trump. Here, play this clip.
So in the days and weeks ahead, I, together with you, will do everything in my power to unite our Democratic Party, to unite our nation, and to win this election. As many of you know, before I was elected as vice president, before I was elected as United States Senator, I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
He's not like us. The former Vice President Kamala Harris is now at the top of the ticket, still vice president, but top of the ticket for the Democratic presidential nomination, talks about her experience also prosecuting cases involving sex abuse. I'll show you this clip.
As a young prosecutor, when I was in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in California, I specialized in cases involving sexual abuse. Donald Trump was found liable by a jury for committing sexual abuse. As Attorney General of California, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges and put it out of business. Donald Trump ran a for-profit college, Trump University, that was forced to pay $25 million to the students it scammed. As district attorney, to go after polluters, I created one of the first environmental justice units in our nation. Donald Trump stood in Mar-a-Lago and told big oil lobbyists he would do their bidding for a $1 billion campaign contribution. During the foreclosure crisis, I took on the big Wall Street banks and won $20 billion for California families, holding those banks accountable for fraud. Donald Trump was just found guilty of 34 counts of fraud. But
I like that she's just calling it like it is.
It's a compelling message.
Prosecuting the message over and over again. And look, I know there's a lot of people out there who are saying, yes, finally, that's the type of message we need to be hearing every day. I can tell you, not just energy in terms of over $81 million raised in the first 24 hours of the announcement that Kamala Harris would now be the presumptive Democratic nominee, but also the Harris campaign has seen a massive surge in energy on the ground, with nearly 30,000 people signing up to volunteer for the first time since yesterday. And the Biden-Harris campaign already had a massive ground operation. Now add 30,000 in 24 hours to that. And I think that number is going to multiply by the day as this momentum and energy grows. And we're going to contrast that to Donald Trump flipping out and Donald Trump's tantrums late at night, Donald Trump's surrogate saying some of the most disgusting things. And then ultimately, I think this message that I've been talking about it over and over again, I think you have to ask voters to say, where was your toilet paper when Donald Trump was in office? And where is your 401k now under the Biden-Harris administration? Where was your toilet paper? Just at a bare minimum. Trump was so ineffective, there was no toilet paper, and a mass casualty event that he contributed to. We got a lot more to talk about. Let's take our last quick break of the show. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, there's been lots of ups and downs and turnarounds lately. And if you've ever scrolled through social media and felt like everyone else's life is picture perfect, I promise you it's not. Look, I've been there, and it's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others, especially online. But here's the thing. What we see on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, it's just a highlight reel. Real life is much more complex. That's where therapy can be a game changer for you. It's a game changer for me. It helps you focus on your own journey instead of measuring yourself against others. BetterHelp makes it easier than ever to connect with a licensed therapist. It's all online, so you can fit sessions into your schedule without hassle. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Meidas. today and get 10% off your first month. That's better, HELP.com/Meidas, MEIDAS. One more time, it's betterhelp.com/Meidas. It's helped me. I think it will help you as well. 1 in 5 Americans have learn a new language on their bucket list. If that's you, make 2024 the year you finally check it off the list with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching, so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. Babbel's convenient courses have helped me learn real-life conversation skills in a different language. It's so easy to learn how to order food, ask for directions, speak to merchants without having to consult language apps while on vacation. Plus, Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you to improve your pronunciation and accent. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but it's only for our listeners at babbel.com/Meidas. So get up to 60% off at babbel.com/Meidas, and that's spelled BABBEL.com/Meidas, MEIDAS. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Let's go, y'all. Shout out BetterHelp. Shout out Babbel. Links to those incredible companies in the description of the YouTube and the audio. You guys know how it works. These are awesome. They definitely help. They're fantastic. Check them out. They help me. I can say that for sure.
You know, I interviewed George Conway earlier in the day. He launched a pack called the Anti-Psychopath Pack. The first question I asked him was, do you think that the contrast between Vice President Harris and Donald Trump accentuates what a psychopath Donald Trump is? And he said, absolutely, it does. And while I think it was important that I think we were kind of at the forefront of showing you, here's what Donald Trump's saying in his speeches. Here's what he's posting. It's more QAnon post. It's more talking about Hannibal Lecter. Here he goes talking about being eaten by sharks again. I think now with this reset, if you will, there's certainly more attention that's going to be paid on it. And it just looks extra sociopathic and deranged, I feel like. And so throughout the night, Trump was posting post. And as I've said before, if you post like this about any topic at all, right, whether it's, you know, you like football or whether it's bird watching or about a book, that whatever it is, like no normal person posts this way. And so the fact that it's post, and it's stream of conscious, and it's like, Biden never had COVID. He's a threat to democracy. What do you mean Biden never had COVID? It's not over. Tomorrow, Crooked Joe Biden's going to wake up and forget that he dropped out of the race today. Crooked Joe just got knocked out. Have to do it a fourth time. Most of these posts are about President Biden. It's like, okay, he does one where he talks about Kamala Harris. But like overall, it's all just why it's just this whininess. And one of the things I just think that voters are going to reject is like, just can we get over this whiny, malignant narcissist? Can we just get this person out of our freaking lives? Because this guy is a madman, and we just want to go about our days without this madman like trying to involve himself in our life. You know, I have a buddy of mine who I play tennis with every Saturday. And he said something so interesting to me. He was like, you know, Ben, the thing about Donald Trump, too, is he's uniquely the worst human being in the United States of America for that job. And as we were driving, he's like, you see her, you see him, you see that kid right there. They would be a better president than Donald Trump. He said, because they will at least listen to other people. Trump puts his own malignant narcissism and his view that he's smarter than people in front of science and data and everything. And he causes catastrophes with everything he touches. I still can't, during his convention speech, it was the worst speech in history where, again, he talked about Hannibal Lecter. He said he wants to hold the next Republican National Convention in Venezuela. He bragged about Kim Jong-un loving him. It's a very weird speech, but I'm still not getting over the fact that before Donald Trump spoke, the primetime speaker was Hulk Hogan, who ripped off his shirt and went, "Oh yeah, this is Hulk Hogan. You better vote for Donald Trump or else." And I'm thinking to myself, look, people's lives are on the line in this election. Our rights and our freedoms are on the line. And the Republican Party is putting Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt and going, "Oh yeah." I mean, it is some beyond deranged and very weird stuff. And let me just show you, the top Trump surrogates. What are they doing today? How are they responding? And we're going to call them out here on the MeidasTouch Network. And I'm hopeful that the corporate media will also call this out, because let me tell you about Donald Trump's top surrogate. Her name is Laura Loomer. She goes to all of Trump's events. She gets primetime spots at the Republican National Convention. She gets reposted by Donald Trump all the time. And Donald Trump talks about being Loomered, where he sends Loomer, as part of their friendship and the fact that she'll be a top person in the Trump administration. And she Loomers people. That's what they call it, to be Loomered. And Donald Trump brags, hey, you don't want to be Loomered because that's when your career ends. And that's when she attacks people for Donald Trump. Just here's Donald Trump saying you don't want to be Loomered at an event at Mar-a-Lago. Let me show you this.
We have a lot of great friends and a lot of great people. Laura, how are you? You look so beautiful, as always. That's a woman with courage. You don't want to be Loomered. If you're Loomered, you're in deep trouble. That's the end of your career, in a sense. Thanks, Laura.
Okay, so Donald Trump says that in private. Let me show you what Trump says in public about her at his rallies. I could show you like 5 to 10 rallies where he says this, but I'll show you one right here. Here, play this clip of Trump.
Really taken the country by storm. Very powerful person, very strong person, very courageous person, a warrior. Laura Loomer. Laura, where are you? Thank you, Laura. Great job you do.
And here's what she's posting today. And I want to, before you put it up there, let me just give you a trigger warning. It's horrific, racist, defamatory stuff that she says. She's a Trump surrogate. She goes out there and gets praised by Donald Trump. She's one of the top people in the MAGA movement. She would likely have a major role, potentially press secretary, if Donald Trump were to be reelected. So it's newsworthy. I have to share this. If we're going to be a courageous and fearless network, I have to show you what one of Trump's top surrogates are out there saying, and one of the top leaders of Trump's MAGA movement saying. So let's just show you a few things that she's saying. And I'm going to stop reading it after a while because you'll get the point. Here she goes. Did you know that Kamala Harris was once an escort and that she got her career started giving, another word she says for oral sex, to be successful to rich black men? She sucked so-and-so's penis while he was I can't even it gets worse from there. And then she posts throughout the day, we cannot and should not accept a drug-using prostitute as our president. She posts Kamala Harris isn't black, and it's posts like this over and over again. And it's sickening. And just me even having to read the words is sickening for me to have to even report on what it is that she's saying. But I think it's important that you know what's going on out there. Like, that's what, to me, the fourth estate journalism, what we should be doing is calling that out. And the fact that I'm sure you probably haven't seen that anywhere other than the MeidasTouch Network, I think is something that,
but you know what we shouldn't do? We shouldn't just take people's words for it. And this is the trap that, and I don't even think it's a trap because I think the media is in on it, but this is what these stations do all the time. And I think it was best exemplified by the convention speech that Donald Trump gave when we showed last week that all of those various newspapers ran headlines and stories based on what Donald Trump told them he was going to say at the event. What Donald Trump told them he was going to say at the event ended up being much different than what Donald Trump actually said at the event. Yet, instead of waiting to hear his actual remarks at the RNC convention, which lasted, 90-something minutes, and were rambling and brought up Hannibal Lecter and all the divisive stuff that we're all used to, and dangerous stuff that we're all used to hearing from Donald Trump, all of these papers and a lot of these cable news networks ran with this BS story of he gave the unity speech. It was all about love and unity and coming together, when that's not reflective even a little bit of the reality. And so all we're asking is, let's, instead of listening to people who lie for a living, who lie quite literally every time they speak, let's actually look at what they are doing. Let's look at what they are not necessarily saying to you, but what they are saying to their base and their followers. And it's not exactly difficult to check Donald Trump's accounts or see what he's saying at his rallies, or just listening to him on a daily basis. And it's going to get worse. Like, having Vice President Harris on the top of the ticket is going to bring out the misogyny, the racism exponentially for all of the Trump surrogates and for Donald Trump. They are simply not going to be able to control themselves. And my only silver lining is that I hope that provides a contrast to the American people who are so actively repulsed by this MAGA movement, to realize just how despicable and how disgusting these people are, and how all of their outreach to all these various communities, whether it's their outreach to women or the Black community, are all rooted in deception and lies. And that is the complete opposite of the way that they actually behave and the policies they actually want to implement.
The way corporate media has been reporting on this, Brett, is, to your point exactly, they just take the Trump campaign at face value, which is like, how can you continue to do that if you're not lazy, dishonest, and worst of all, intentional? That's why over the course of these couple of weeks, I think the MeidasTouch Network has grown exponentially, because people are so sick of just being gaslit by corporate media, by seeing the Donald Trump RNC speech and how crazy that was. And then the next day, not even getting more than 10 minutes of coverage on it from, name that corporate media station, CNN, MSNBC, and them just continuing to talk, Biden at the time. It's frustrating. But that's why I rely so heavily on this community here, the Meidas Mighty, this pro-democracy community, to continue to point people towards the North Star, which is what we're trying to do here, which is just be unapologetically pro-democracy and just call the things out as we see them, because it's utter lunacy. And so please, my one thing, my major request here to this community as we continue to go forward, I'm seeing a mass exodus from the corporate media stations. You know who they are. When people ask you, your friends, your neighbors who are so sick of being gaslit, where to go, point them here, because this community is welcoming, and most importantly, it's honest. So I appreciate everything that you guys have done, and we've seen it in the numbers here. So let's continue to grow this as we sprint through the finish line.
One of the questions that's often asked at an election was, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I think that there is a great case to be made right now. And the way I said it is, ask where your toilet paper was 4 years ago and where your 401k is today. Brett, can you give us some economic news right now, if you will?
I can give us some economic news, but first,
this is the NetSuite by Oracle Know Your Numbers Minute.
Okay, we got a lot of economic news, and I think it's important that not only do we reflect on the race for the presidency, but we reflect on what is actually happening now and the progress that our country has made. I think it is undeniable, as Ben said in his 4 years ago comparison, if you just look at the raw data and just reality, quite frankly, we are immeasurably better today than we were 4 years ago. It's not even close. It's why anytime any of these people at the RNC, these Republicans, tried to say, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And the crowd chanted yes, probably a self-selecting sample, because there are far too many people who are not here today due to the actions of Donald Trump to completely mismanage this pandemic. Now, let's actually talk about some of the data, because the economy is roaring. And remember, Vice President Harris, one of her advantages right now also is she gets to run on all the accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. And I would say these are certainly accomplishments as we look at the progress that have been made, especially on inflation, where America has led the world in lower inflation comparatively to other nations. Like, inflation is a global issue, as we all know. The US managed it quite literally the best of any other nation. And we can look to the data. Consumer prices fell in June for the first time since the early months of the pandemic. That's since about May 2020, decreasing by 0.1% on a monthly basis. That helped reduce the annual inflation rate from 3% from 3.3% in May. And this was also, as we always see every single month in all these reports, are contrary to the economists' expectations, who thought that it was going to increase by a little bit. Inflation is now the lowest that it has been in over 3 years. The Goldman Sachs core inflation tracker is now below 2%. That 2% number is a key indicator for the Fed. Falling below 2%, seeing that we're not only having no inflation month to month now, but that inflation is decreasing. These are all signs that there could be an upcoming Federal Reserve rate cut. And many now are expecting that a rate cut is going to come this September. And as we see all these government changes, it's worth reminding you that our sponsor NetSuite has features to quickly adapt to new government economic policies through these agile system updates, so that you could always stay up to date. And as a result of all this economic news, stocks continue to rise and soar. They're hitting records, seems like every single day, based on new news. And it's not just based necessarily on GDP growth and things like that, but it's based on wages increasing for consumers. It's based on increased consumer confidence, inflation decreasing, all things that actually impact people at home in a big, big way. Also worth noting, with NetSuite, you get these tailored reporting features that allow businesses to focus on those specific stock market indicators that are relevant to whatever your business is, so you could always stay a step ahead of the game. And in addition to the headline inflation figures, the core index, that's the one that excludes the volatile food and energy prices, that also showed improvement. The CPI rose only 0.1% for May. That's the slowest increase since August 2021, bringing annual core inflation down to 3.3% from 3.4%. That also is a new 3-year low. So a lot to be happy about in the economy. Work, yes, still to be done. But we have to be so thrilled by the progress that we're seeing right now, and the resilience of the American worker, the resilience of the American economy, in spite of everything that has happened to our country over these past few years.
That was the NetSuite by Oracle Know Your Numbers Minute. Do you know your own numbers for your business? Download NetSuite's ultimate KPI checklist right now at netsuite.com/Meidas.
Well, look,
I love that segment. I love that segment so much, because naturally we're just going to do that in the show anyway. So the fact that they can, support the network in that way, show them some love. Meidas Mighty, click that link, go to their website. Every time we do this segment, we basically crash the site. So it's been pretty cool to see that and have them come back to me the next day. Click that link, check it out. It's awesome.
Can I show a couple of political cartoons I saw before we
please
kind of make our way out? Because I thought these were really cool. First, let's see if I have this one. This is from Mike Lukovich from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I thought this was a really powerful political cartoon. And for the people that are just listening, it's a picture of a bridge, and it says America's infrastructure president. And the name on the bridge, the text says the Joe Biden bridge to the next generation. I think how fitting that the infrastructure president, the guy who passed the most comprehensive infrastructure bill that we have seen in this country in decades, how much it lines up that he is now the figurative bridge to the next generation, passing the baton to Kamala Harris to run. There was also another political cartoon I saw going around that I think is worth sharing with you. It's has to do with that famous Obama Hope photo that we've all seen that was popularized during the Obama campaign, and has Obama with hope in that style, that Shepard Fairey style. It has Trump where it says hate. It has Biden heal and Kamala Harris grow. I thought this was just very powerful images, very powerful kind of political art that, is worth sharing. And I'm sure, a lot of you might want to like screenshot and continue to share these out, because I think the messaging is quite powerful.
Well, look, as Vice President Harris, now the presumptive Democratic nominee, said, it has been a roller coaster. And I remember I was speaking to Jordy on the phone this weekend when President Biden made the announcement, and Jordy and I were just talking about our days, and Jordy said, it just happened. And I remember it very, very vividly. And my initial reaction was kind of sadness and anger, and I was upset. And I walked around the block for about, 20, 30 minutes before reporting on it. And my first report, and this was before President Biden endorsed Kamala Harris, when there was so much uncertainty, it was just kind of, sadness. And I just did the straight reporting, like, here's what happened, here's the letter, here's what was said. But you could tell if you watch that video that I was sad. And then as the day progressed, my emotions also really went towards, I think, a duty that we have to our democracy, and then recognizing that Vice President Kamala Harris is made for this moment. She's a perfect candidate for this moment. And there is so much momentum and so much energy, and the handoff so selfless by President Biden, the symbolism around it, the contrast with Donald Trump, the contrast between the parties really energized me in a way that I really haven't been energized in recent memory. And so the emotion shifted, over time to hope and excitement, and that we're in this together. And so that's the moment that we find ourselves in there. And you may have found that you've kind of went through those emotions as well. And so I just wanted to share with you my experience, as well. And I think there are some lessons that have to be learned as well. It's also got to be about rebuilding this media zeitgeist with the failures that we saw and the failures that we'll continue to see unless we all become the change that we wanted. And so you all who are a part of this community, let's build the media network that we always wanted right here at the MeidasTouch Network. One way you can help out is patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Become a member there. We'll be announcing soon a live chat. So if you ever wanted to meet me, Brett and Jordy, go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch and check it out. And that's one way to help. But just spread the people know, family, coworkers, neighbors, about this network. Subscribe also to the audio podcast, not just, the YouTube channel, which is growing in record numbers, but subscribe also to the audio podcast. Just search MeidasTouch Podcast, hit subscribe, and that'll help the podcast show up on the top of the charts for podcasts. So,
and by the way, we do a bunch of daily episodes that we release. So it's not just this long form that you're hearing here. Ben gives up, 15, 20-minute takes throughout the day to keep you informed. So if you're lunch or working out or whatever, you need to get that quick pro-democracy fix in, the audio is a great place to go for that.
I want to thank everybody for watching. We're in this together, and this community is not possible without you. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Jordy, take it away.
Shout out to the Midas Mighty!
The Midas Mighty standing strong against the fascists. We sing our song. We will get it right whenever.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. The film Against All Enemies, which I co-produced with Ben Meiselas and this network, has won awards around the world for its up-close portrayal of America's insurrectionist movement. It premieres in the U.S. on March 29th on Amazon and Apple TV. Go to againstalllenemiesfilm.com or click the link below. But don't just watch Against All Enemies. Tell your friends about it. It's one more way to hold accountable those who threaten our democracy. Thanks, Midas Mighty. Let's use our power well.